Hey, it's 6 p.m. on Sunday. Welcome to Steve's Place. Tonight's guest will be Dannel Roberts, who's done a lot of work with a new physics concept called the key ring atom. And tonight I'll be talking about some anti-gravity. But before we do that, I'd like to remind everyone that we have the Extraordinary Technology Conference coming up August 9th to 13th in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'd like to let everyone know that if you sign up tonight, call me after the show, and we'll give you a 45% discount tonight only. So please give us a call and check it out. And I'd like to encourage, if you're not a member already, to become a member of the YouTube channel. It's like $9.99 a month to be a member, and you can get to see over close to 1,000 videos. At this point, we're getting ready to add more. And if you go to our homepage, you'll see this yellow box here, and you can go to our conference directory and look up the conferences and for a playlist of each conference that's separated out, or you can look at each speaker directly there just by looking up the speaker and clicking on their last name or or just go up to the Tesla Check channel and check out the homepage. It's important to at least subscribe to the YouTube channel so that way you'll be notified of any new DVD titles as they are premiered. And we rotate our videos, and we do limit the number of free ones. So we encourage you to become a member. Every penny you spend on this channel goes back into promoting our conferences and helping us get our magazine back into track. I'm hoping to do that next year. Okay, and then it's important that you check out our older DVDs because it's through what we've done in the past that we kind of have an idea of where we're going with tomorrow's technology. It's kind of like how do you know where you're at if you don't know where you've been? And with the new technologies that we have available, sometimes an inventor might have had a really good idea, but just the technology wasn't there to bring it to fruition. So get an exclusive membership, an extraordinary bargain for $9.99 a month. And you can watch this thing anywhere in the world that you can get internet. So without further ado, I'm gonna bring up Dannel, and there you are, Dannel.
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. How you doing?
So anyway, Dannel's going to bring us all the latest information on the key ring atom and its effect as far as gravity cloaking. And so, Dannel, without further ado, you can just take it from there and just jump right into your presentation.
All right. Well, everybody, my name's Dannel Roberts. If you don't know me, I'm from right in the middle of Missouri. I've got a wife, 4 kids. Like working on physics, something I have really enjoyed doing. I made my living, of all things, designing and building computer software. I did that for 38 years, and I retired a couple years ago. And I'm hoping to get back into physics a little more than what I have in the past because now I got the time to do it. And one of my things was theories on how UFO works, how energy works, and some other things. And let me turn a slide here. The PAP engine. Now, as you do your research, I found a guy. His name was Joseph Papp, and he had built an engine. And where he got the engine built was up in West Liberty, Iowa, by a guy named Bob Roner. And this engine, from what I could tell, at 1,000 RPMs would produce 106 horsepower with 657 foot-pound of torque. And the engine had no intake, no exhaust, and no heat. You just filled it up with a gas mixture that Pap had, and he would start it up, and you would run it. And Bob Roner is the one that was kind of behind it. He had a excuse me, he had a machine shop that he ran, and that's where they built the engine. And then Pap perfected it. And Joseph Pap got sick with cancer and died, and died with the secret. And Bob Roner kept trying to figure out how it worked. And about, I don't know, it's over 12 years ago, I went up and I started working with Bob, trying to figure out how this works. Now, Bob has part of the secret, I think, figured out. He has a piston that he'll fire up, and you produce an electrical discharge, and it'll drive the piston, and we can put quite a bit of weight on it and do some other stuff. And like I said, I've worked with Bob for 12 years. Lately, we've got some stuff that's really exciting. But one of the things is you have to get an over unity explosion, one, all right, and repeat that to get an engine that's going to work. Now, I have only seen one. One day we'd been up there and we quit working. I work here in in Missouri. Bob is in West Liberty Island. It's about a 5-hour drive. So I'll drive up there the night before. We'll work all day and come back. There was one time where we showed up there and we said, well, let's just test and see if the piston works. And it just went boom, and it lifted the whole table. I mean, just shook the whole place. We've never been able to recreate that. But I'll just tell you, I do believe that there is an over unity explosion that you can do with something similar to PAP. We haven't figured it out yet, but we're both still into it, still alive, still kicking. I was up there this Thursday. Bob's moved his shop around a little bit. The PAP engine, the one that produced the horsepower, is still sitting there. It's a 3-inch piston with 4.25 stroke. So I have put a lot of time and effort into that. Nothing like what Bob has. So we go up there and we have fun. We play around. Hopefully someday we can get this out on the market. Now, that's my primary interest, is to get an unlimited supply of energy or help do that. My second interest is figuring out how these UFOs work, how they fly, because I want one. All right. They'd be great to fly with. So let me show you where I live here. It's just south of Jefferson City here. And I live about 50 miles below the Lake of the Ozarks. This is the Osage River, and it's kind of in a horseshoe. And I'm on a cliff which is about 200 feet up in the air above it. And what's really interesting here is just to the left of the picture, just downriver, is the St. Thomas Bridge. Now, I don't know what it is about that bridge. It's some kind of landmark. Now, helicopters fly over this thing all the time. One time, I heard this real loud boat, and somebody flew under the bridge. It was just a little single-engine plane. And we were actually looking down on them. So you hear these planes. Now, the coolest planes that there is Whiteman Air Force Base is south and east of us by about 100 miles. And these A-10 Warthogs, they almost always come in pairs, and they will fly literally right over the top of my house. And I mean, they are so loud and so cool. And I mean, some of them, and what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll circle in over the top of that bridge, and they'll go around. Now, I've even had a hot air balloon come right over the top of the house, and they are one of the noisiest things you can ever imagine. That, like, every time they shoot that gas up in the top of it, it'll go. So all that's noisy. So this is where we live. Love the place. Wonderful place. So one night in about somewhere between 1994 and 1996, somewhere in there, we were just sitting in the house and I saw a bunch of lights. And so we go outside, and this is what we see. My wife and I both see this thing. And we're like, oh boy, what is this? Now, it was dark when we see it. Now, what you're seeing here, the picture here is sunset. But it was dark, and it came from across the horizon, and then it went across there all the way. And then if you see where the trees are on the right, and it barely cleared the trees. And from what I can measure, it was probably about 350 feet away. It was faster than the helicopters, but it was not as fast as the A-10 Warthogs. Now, the strange thing was, this was a quiet, summer night. There was no sound, zero sound. All right. So this thing goes by. Well, all right. Now, my wife and I, we've seen a UFO. So the next morning, when we get up, it's hopping all over the news, and this thing was seen from where I live all the way up to Moberly, Missouri, which is south about 100 about 100 miles. So I'm guessing this thing was going about 100, 150, maybe 200 mile an hour, but 90 people reported this thing. So, of course, what the news report? Well, there was a weather balloon in that area. Well, weather balloons don't move that fast, aren't that big, aren't that silent, and cannot navigate right over the tops of the trees. All right. So I went from skeptic on UFOs to I believe what I see. So I had seen this thing. So I'm looking for answers. And I think the Bible is a great place, maybe one of the best places for scientific information. So I went there and I looked and I found this passage. The chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands of angels. The Lord is among them, as in Sinai in the holy place. Now, do you think God's just got a little chariot that two little horses pull around? Or do you think there's something different? They didn't have a way of describing this, but there's 20,000 of them that God has. All right. I think these may or may not be some of the UFOs that people are seeing. All right. Now, the other thing is that even thousands of angels, what some people think are aliens, maybe they're seeing angels, they just don't know it. And it says the Lord is among them as in Sinai in the holy place. Now, this place where I call Sinai, that God's there. Now, if he's got all these chariots, where does he put them? Where does he park them? Does he have like a dark hole or a black hole, like a garage door that he goes and he parks them in? So I'm just asking questions. I'm in my 20s or 30s there when this happened. So I go to a Bible study, and there's a bunch of old gentlemen there. And I thought, well, I'm liable to just get kicked out, but I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to see what everybody says. So I brought this up, read this scripture, and then I was going to see what everybody said. Well, the first guy was Bill. And Bill stands up and he says, well, you guys aren't going to believe this. He goes, but I'm a TWA pilot, or a retired TWA pilot. And he said, one day, he goes, we were flying along at cruising altitude, if that's 30 or 35,000 feet or whatever. He goes, we were just cruising along. And he goes, we get in these patterns, so we're supposed to fly the same. So there was a plane behind us, and we were flying. And he goes, we were going along there, and all of a sudden, something from outer space comes down, buzzes right by him, and zips back, and the plane behind them had to move to get out of its way. Now, the plane behind goes, did you guys see that? And he goes, we answered yes. And he goes, we didn't say anything else, because if you report them, if you're a pilot, you will lose your license and you won't be a pilot anymore. So that was the first guy. And I thought, oh, well, I've always wondered, did they come from outer space? Now, I knew this guy for a while. I trusted him. And so then what was amazing, another old guy stands up. He goes, well, I'm a Church of God minister. And he goes, we were out down in Mexico. First of all, he starts out, he goes, you're not going to believe this. He goes, but I'm a Church of God minister, have been my whole life. He goes, we was down in Mexico doing a revival. And he says, so then I was driving across New Mexico. And he goes, and all of a sudden, just like what they show on TV, there was one of them flying saucers. And he goes, and it just went boom, and it was across the horizon on the other thing. And so then another guy stood up, and he goes, well, you're probably not going to believe this. He goes, but I was in the Korean War on an aircraft carrier. And he goes, we all knew about them. And he goes, they had standing orders to shoot them down. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, and standing orders to shoot them down. He goes, I saw it on gun footage. He said, one of our, I don't know which jet it was or how fast it was going, but he goes, he went as fast as he could go. So you're talking close to Mach 1 and maybe over Mach 1. He goes, when he was chasing this UFO, and he says that thing just went boom and then boom straight up and it was gone. And he goes, we don't have anything that can fly like that. And then there was two brothers there, and I was talking, and they go, well, I saw one. He goes, I was upstairs, looked out, and there was a little bitty flying saucer hovering around outside. And the other brother looked at him, he goes, you saw it too? He goes, yeah. He goes, where were you? I was outside. And so both of them run and told their mom and dad, and then he ran outside and it was gone. So as a scientist, I got, rather than getting kicked out of Bible study, I got information that takes people years and years and years to collect. Flying saucers come from outer space. They're faster than any of our aircraft. The military knows about them. They have it on gun footage. So when you hear all that, I knew this in the 90s. So my perspective of flying saucers is they are real. They are something. Now, if they're the chariots of God, that helps me with the answer. They're of the realm, the spirit realm. Something to do with that. Don't know what, but that's what I see. Now, how do flying saucers fly? Now, the one I saw, you would have had to do two things for it to fly the way I saw it. Number one, no inertia. All right? Because it just floated. All right, so you have to nullify the inertia. And then the other thing is you have to nullify or reverse the effects of the gravity of the earth. All right, those are the two things that you have to do. Now, if you listen to the stories, the one from outer space, it's capable of going in a vacuum, coming down, zipping by. The guy in the New Mexico desert, like, that's when everybody's seeing. He said it was in the 50s, but goes from here to there, just bang. All right. We don't have anything accelerate like that. Now, if you were in something and you accelerated that fast, it would kill you because, you can only go so fast in a rocket and you take off or it'll mash you. They put you in those spinners to test your inertia. It puts too many G forces on you. All right. So that's where I am. They have to do those two things to fly. Now, whenever you go through the history of gravity, Isaac Newton said it's the natural attraction objects had for each other. Now, Isaac Newton's work come off of Galileo and Copernicus. Copernicus came out and said the Earth's not the center of the universe. It rotates around the sun, and the moon rotates around the Earth. And of course, he got in a lot of trouble for saying that. But it took 100 years later. Then Galileo come along, had telescopes, kind of proved here it is, and all the other stuff. Then Isaac Newton did the gravity. So whenever you look at gravity and how long it takes people to change and think things through, it takes hundreds of years. But Isaac Newton said it's the natural attraction objects had for each other. And the two schools of thought were gravity is a force, some magic force that pulls, or it could be a particle that pushes. Now, the majority of the people believe that it's a particle that pushes, or a force that pulls. Very few believe it's a particle that pushes. So, gravity in grade school. Now, all right, guys, where I'm going with this is I'm going to give you my basic beliefs on gravity, and then I'm going to get to a gravity cloaking device, and then I'm going to cover some new information that came out of Skinwalker Ranch, a piece of information I was looking through that ties a whole bunch of pieces together. So that's where I'm going. So I'm going to try and lay the ground floor here for how gravity works, and then how you can build a gravity cloaking device to block gravity. Now, when I was in grade school, all right, I have this ability to see things. Um, well, how would I describe it? If you've ever seen Tony Stark's movie Iron Man, and whenever he says computer and it pulls that stuff up and it draws it for you, and you make the Iron Man, you make the skeleton, and you make the legs, and you do all that other stuff. I can do that in my head. I can see that stuff, but I've always been able to do that when I was a kid. All right, and so whenever I was in grade school and they started talking about gravity, the force to pull just, it never did make sense to me. Like, how can something pull something? It has to know it's there. I mean, like if you're a cowboy trying to rope a calf, you have to see the calf, throw the rope around him and pull him back. So I never could understand that. So I kind of developed my own little way of seeing gravity. And the way I saw it was as there was a wind coming down to the earth. And as the wind would come down, it would go through your body and push you and hold you on the earth. All right. Now, I always had that idea, but I pretty well kept it to myself. There's nothing anybody wanted to talk to some kid in grade school about. Well, now I decided to take all the stuff that I'd come over the years that I developed. Uh, One of my greatest breakthroughs in physics was I was going in and I looked at the atom, and it was in a book. And what was in the book was no one has ever seen the inside of an atom, and probably never will. Well, the reason I never understood the inside of the atom was because I think what they teach is wrong. Now, there is obviously a little core there, and there's a cloud. All right. And so it's different. All right. And we're going to show my atom here, what I think it looks like. It's a torus structure. And this torus structure works all the way out to what I think is how you produce the gravity cloaking technology. So everything that I had worked on all my life up until I was about in 2004 here is when I wrote this book, which has kind of opened the doors for me to get into Tesla Tech. The what was I going to say here? All right. The book was copyrighted in 2004. Now, this is the same year the Tic Tac UFO video was filmed. I want to say that ahead of time, just so you know, because you're going to see some real strange similarities to what I have in my book and some of the things that they see in the Tic Tac video. Now, rather than having a proton at the center of your atom, I just had something called a key ring. All right, a key ring will hold keys all the way around it. And so you have the center there, which is the key ring, and then around it you will have circling particles. All right, and so they will circle around. So rather than the mass or the bulk of the energy being in the core, it's in the cloud. So then when you look at the next picture here, you look at this, we put it in colors. If you just take a slinky and you put a slinky all the way together and all the way around, that's what this looks like. Except imagine if you see the little pink part there in the middle, that's your key ring. And the reason I called it the key ring atom. Now, one of the things is because of the way this atom is, just imagine throwing an arrow or a spear or a gravity particle. It's pretty well going to go through it because it's just like a screen. There's nothing there. All right. So this is the atom. Now, all the particles on one side, on the way it's oriented, will be turning in. Now, if you flip it over, they're all going to be turning out. So if you look at an atom, you're going to see a movement in down through the center, and then you're going to have a movement coming out. So when you look at this video here, notice you see particles coming in and through the atom. And the next thing we're going to see is going to be like a vacuum cleaner. So what each atom does is it has circling particles, and that is the mechanism by which a flow of particles goes through. Now, we have come to know or believe, or this is what I believe, this flow of particles is gravity. Now, here's another way of looking at it, is look at it like a vacuum cleaner. All right, so you have a hose here at the end of the vacuum cleaner, and you turn it on, and you have feathers up in the air. Now, the feathers closest to it will just get sucked right in. So what happens is as the particles are moving down and through each feather, all right, they move towards the center or where the suction is. Now, the reason you get stuck on the earth is just put a screen over the end of the nozzle and the feathers will stick there. And that's the same thing that holds you on the earth. It's the air, the wind, the gravity blowing down through your body, holding you on the earth. Now, this here is like the sun, and you got Mercury, Venus, and the Earth, and the sun, and all these particles are going through them. And as they rotate around, that's what holds them in place. All right, you got centrifugal force trying to move them out, and all these particles are holding them in place and going through them. Now, this one's a little harder. This is inertia or personal gravity. Now, you have gravity going in through to you and from all directions. All right, it's holding you in place. All right, so your personal gravity adjusts to your movement and then it reaches equilibrium. So, for example, if you're sitting in a car and you're zero and you hit the gas and you accelerate, as you go forward, all right, the gravity in front of you is going to bunch up and push you. There's going to be a void behind you. So when you accelerate, you're going back. Then when you hit the brakes, you produce a void in front of you, and the particles behind you bunch up and they push you forward. And then once you hit zero or whatever in your car, then you hit equilibrium and you don't have the inertia moving you forward or backward. But your gravity is what gives you inertia. Let me back up a little bit here. On my book. My book is called Particle Mechanics, the Theory of Energy States. So I believe each particle has a state of energy that it's in. All right. So, for example, if you have light coming from the sun, all right, if it's coming down and it hits a solar panel, the solar panel will cause it to change its state from from a light particle to an electricity particle. The electricity particle can then go over to light, and then that particle can be turned right back into light. All right. Now, also, things go through certain substances and not. So, for example, if I have a plate glass right here and I shine a light on it, the light will go right through the glass. However, if I put some silver behind it, becomes a mirror, and you shine a light on it and it reflects back. So if you look at light, light can go through something, light can be reflected from something, or when it hits the solar panel, it can be changed. So the idea that we're going to do here on gravity cloaking is to either block or change the gravity so that it no longer affects where it's going to. Now, another way to think of gravity cloaking is like if you're outside and the wind's blowing and it's cold and you got a cloth shirt on, how the wind blows through and you feel the cold. Well, if you put a breaker on, you block that, you block the cold. So I'm trying to give a couple examples here of how gravity cloaking is going to work. You're going to block the gravity. Now, this is this is similar to the shape and size of what my wife and I saw at my house. Now, if you think it looks like a tic tac, well, it does. All right, so that's what we saw. This was 2004, the same time they videotaped the tic tac video. So now, one of the things is to do this, I've got a main reactor or a main gravity cloaking device right in the center, the yellow part. And then below them, there's two arches. And in between the two arches, there is a upper gravity cloaking mechanism and a lower gravity cloaking mechanism. All right. And they're there to fill in the holes that the torus structure is going to build. All right. So whenever you build the cloaking device, you turn these on, it's going to be like a coil. You turn a coil on in a magnet and you see this field around it. That's what I believe these things do. Now, this is with the gravity cloaking device turned on. Notice the green would be their main cloaking engine. And if you notice, look right there in the center, you'll see the ring that everything goes through covers the outside of the craft. Now, because it's a torus structure, which all my book is based on torus structure, you have to block the upper part of the torus structure and you have to block the lower part of the torus structure. That's why you need the upper mechanism and the lower mechanism. Now, the things on the sides, as we go along here, the things on the side were like a light emitter, which I saw light on that craft. I believe light helps do the navigation. So when the light shines out, it makes it move. Now, I also had something on there, didn't hear any sound, but I'm not opposed to sound being able to come out of this, all right, to drive it. Now, at the bottom, if you emitted more light, the faster it would go. Now, once this thing is fully cloaked, it has no inertia, no effect from the Earth's gravity, none whatsoever. So it can just literally float along. And then if you emit the light or the sound, that will cause it to move. Now, how do you make it go really, really fast? Well, since there's no inertia and gravity pushes, if you turn the lower cloaking, gravity cloaking device off, gravity will flow in and gravity will push this thing. All right. And the limit of this is going to be the speed of gravity. So if that's the speed of light, gravity's faster or gravity slower, we don't know. All right. So that's kind of what I had put together. And I didn't know what kind of energy sources it would take to produce the gravity cloak. So I have been looking for this for a long time. Now, I like to watch these kind of shows. And this is a show I really liked. And one of the reasons is they're in an area where there's a black hole. There's flying saucers coming in and out of there. Now, they got this guy on there, Travis Taylor, and I really like this guy because he's a scientist. He shows up there. He's never seen any UFOs. He says, yeah, everybody's seen them. He calls them UFOs. Well, right off the bat, he saw one. And he believed it. But then he saw another one, and he saw another one, and he saw another one. All right. And he kept seeing these things until now he's a big promoter of UFOs, and they have pictures of them going in and out of black holes. All right, now one of the things that's real interesting is they were trying to shoot some rockets up into this black hole or this area above the ranch that they've kind of spotted, and they hired a guy to come out, and he had some equipment that they were going to monitor it with, and they would go 5, 4, 3, 2, bang, battery go dead, and they did it like 3 or 4 times in a row. So that equipment they never got. So then the next guy that come out, he had it was not hooked to internet. He had a telescope that was trained up on this thing, and they were going to shoot rockets up uh, into this area and see what happened. All right, and so to do that, the guy had these constellations or stars behind it. So they get ready to do their experiment. They fire it all up, and voila, something deletes the codes for where these constellations are. And they go, well, put another one in. So they put another one in, something deleted it while they're there watching. All right. And they didn't have any idea what it is. All right. So you just go, well, what's going on? Well, I kind of think if beings have places they park their flying saucers, it's just think of it like Jay Leno's garage or something. So if you got these guys down there shooting rockets, all right, at your garage, what are you going to do? Well, make their equipment break. And I think whatever's up there was showing Travis. I think it likes Travis. I said, I think it's showing Travis, we're way, way, way smarter than you. We're going to turn your stuff off. Now, the big piece of information that come out up there was they monitor everything. There's a guy, Eric, there, got all kinds of equipment, all kind of monitoring. And when these UFOs show up, they get a 1.6 gigahertz reading. Now, one day they got a 1.6457 to 458 or 9, and it was varying a little bit, but they get this. Now, Travis is not looking for what I'm looking for. Travis is trying to figure out, he's trying to believe in UFOs, which I've been there for, since the 90s. He's trying to figure all this stuff out. All right. I'm looking for how do flying saucers fly? What's the energy source? And so I'm like, all right, 1.6 gigahertz may be the energy or the frequency that it takes to block the gravity. Now, like I said, if you think of a magnetic coil and you coil it, send an electrical signal to it or an electric DC, it produces a field around it. Now, what I think they got up there is something a little bit different. Similar, very similar, but a little bit different. Now, if you guys know who this is, who this person I'm going to talk about next, please don't tell me who it is on the chat. Because I would like to, if we could find out later what it is that this guy has. And I'm going to take what it was a few years ago when we were at Tesla Tech seminar. A guy had a broken piece of a flying saucer. Yeah, we spelled flying wrong, but if I spell something wrong in one of my seminars, guy says the guy can't spell. So how would he know physics? I mean, so if I misspell something, it doesn't bother me. I guess somebody find something I got wrong. But this guy had this piece of flying saucer, and it came from New Mexico. And it looked like a gray, pewter-looking piece of metal. So if you know who this is, don't say, because we need to do some things with it. And it was hollow. It was a honeycomb. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And it was honeycomb, and it was a bunch of holes in it. And I looked at it, and it was probably, it was about the size of a walnut. And it was mangled up a little bit. But he said that they had been 3 UFOs or 4 UFOs that had crashed in New Mexico, not just the Roswell one. And so he said they were there and they found some stuff that they missed. And he believes that's one of them. Now, that may be part of the secret to how flying saucers fly. And this is what I'm going to call this a gravity cloaking resonator coil. Rather than it being a coil of wire, all right, that's going around like in a coil, what they have is they're going to have either a device or it could be in the hole, and these little holes are in there to resonate the 1.6 gigahertz frequency to resonate around there. And it may cause the gravity cloak to go around the craft. And then you have your resonator above and you have your resonator below to control direction and the flow of all the other stuff. But it's a resonator coil. It's got holes in it. Now, you may have to put a special gas in it. You might have to put argon, or you may have to put inert gas like nitrogen. There may be some certain things that you have to do with that. But this piece of material this guy has, if we could get this to Steve, if somebody knew who this guy is, get a bunch of pictures of it and maybe stick some fishing line or something through it to see if the coils go all the way through, and measure the size of the holes. All right. And just think of it this way. It's just like a trumpet and you blow a sound, how it resonates in there, that RF frequency when it's going through there. When a gravity particle comes down and it hits that, it changes state to something else. Inertia has no effect. All right. And the Earth's gravity has no effect. So that's kind of how they fly. Now, why did UFOs crash? Well, the rumor was, and I'd heard this a couple times, was they had flown into some radar fields and they crashed. Now, guess what? They were experimenting with radar out there in the areas where the crashes were. And the radar operates between 400 megahertz, most of them, and 36 gigahertz. So why did they crash? Well, if you have resonators that are off of 1.6 gigahertz radio frequencies and you fly through a zone and it disrupts your gravity cloak. So let's say you've got one of these ships and it's gravity cloaked and you're flying through this and you lose your gravity cloak. All right, those ships are not aerodynamic. What are they going to do? They're going down. So I think the whoever was doing the UFOs, they've been flying around for thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years. Who knows how long? That scripture from Psalms is well over 2,000 years old. So they've just been buzzing around, not paying attention. All of a sudden, realize, hey, these guys have got radar going, and it's going to crash us. So then they have to change their technology around a little bit. But that would add weight. All right, that would add weight to how gravity cloaking works. Now, when I did this presentation, my son told me, you need to go watch the Tic Tac video that Joe Rogan did. So I thought, okay. So when I put my presentation together and I went and watched that. Now, we'll go all the way back here. Now, all right, they look like Tic Tacs. All right, if you see the video, this is what they look like with this bubble around them. Go look at it. Now, the other thing is, if you see how it's oriented and how it flies, whenever it turns, one side is always the driving side. So it is driven by gravity from the bottoms. So when you see those Tic Tac videos, I wrote my book the same time that video was took. I did not have any knowledge of any of that. But the cloak is around it and it has a Tic Tac shape. So now, after I watched that video, they talk about this guy, Bob Lazar. Well, I've heard of Bob Lazar, but I'd never seen him and had never talked to him, never seen his video. They badmouthed him real bad. But Joe Rogan had him on there, and Joe Rogan let him tell his story. And his story was that he was at a base, worked on the power supply, but he was in a UFO. All right. They let him go into the craft. And he said it was made for people that were probably 3 feet tall. But what was really strange was he said the inside of it was a pewter gray. Now, that matches up to that piece of material that guy has. He said the whole thing was pewter gray. He said you had 3 floors. He said you had your main chamber, and I'm not making this up. I have not seen anything that Bob Lazar did. But he said there was a main gravity or drive in the middle. And if you look at this picture, you see that's what I have. He said then there was a chamber above with a gravity, he called it a gravity emitter device. And then below was a gravity emitter device. And it's Joe Rogan, Spotify. You can go listen to it. You can see what he said. I don't think he saw my book and got his ideas out of there either, because he was before I was. Now, the other thing that he said was he had archways in it. There were archways in it. So we drew this, guys, 18 years ago in 2004, and I've got archways in there. Either we just got dumb lucky, or the physics I'm talking about here are getting close. Now, he said and they actually showed him, and he got to see one run, but he said it also drives, he said, from the belly, which we have right here. Now, when you look at these crafts, because there's no inertia and no gravity effect, it don't matter which side's the belly. All right, and you see how it drives from there. But now, one of the key pieces of information that Bob Lazar said, he goes, what was really strange, he goes, here they got this gravity cloak, and it's supposed to be this intense field. And he goes, and they were talking to the guy inside there. He goes, I saw it. It was a regular old radio. And he would talk right through that cloak. So that also adds weight to what I'm going to do, saying, because, one radio frequency may or may not interfere with another radio frequency. So that would tell me there's a high probability that the gravity cloak, the bubble we're seeing around these TikToks, is RF frequency related. Now, the other thing I'm going to tell you is I do not believe the inside shape matters. I believe you have to have this torus structure, the main torus structure, and an upper gravity cloaking device and a lower gravity cloaking device. I don't think the shape of this really matters, as long as the field covers it. Now, another sticker here is when you look at this, when you do not have the lower cloaking device turned on, and it's round at the top, a circle in the middle, it also produces the heart shape that Bob Lazar said. So I've just seen these videos, and I'm like, man, this is really close to what I did and what I have put in my book. So now that's what I pretty well got. So I guess we're going to go through questions.
Okay. So anyway, I put the caller line if anyone wants to call in there, or you can leave a comment, and ask your questions to the comment. We have a couple already. Um, One is by Norman Imperial, and he talks about this guy Wesley Bateman. Have you ever heard of this guy?
No.
Raw
But
research.
let me say one thing. I believe this is just one way of producing gravity cloak. There may be dozens, hundreds, or thousands.
Okay, and then he says another gentleman, Wally. He says, "Why does IR work to detect? You need a variable frequency scanner."
All right, on Skinwalker Ranch, there's a guy named Eric there that runs all the equipment. I'm not good enough to tell you what kind of equipment it was, but this is a real good thing because if somebody knows where there's lots of UFOs, to take a scanner with you to see if you're detecting any frequencies, and then you can add to the general knowledge that we have here.
Okay, and then we also have Felix. So it's supposed to be between microwave and IR gravity frequency.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, we're talking the same thing. Um, the well, just think of it this way: the gravity particle is just buzzing along. All right, and it's going to go through its atom, and what comes out the other side, it's going to change its state to something else. So 1.6 is one frequency hits it. There might be a microwave frequency that hits it and causes it to change. So once you change the particle, it's not going to go through the atoms and it's not going to produce the inertia. So you could have multiple ones.
Okay, and I'd like to make some comments here. One is the human body can withstand up to 20 G's. Um, we When I worked at AMI Aircraft Mechanics Incorporated, my boss, he was inventing um, like a shock absorber for helicopter seats, because like when a helicopter seat comes down, it's that sudden stop at the bottom that will kill the pilot, and because the pilot will go through the floor. And what he had was like a tube with a ball and a rod that was being pulled through there, and the tube expands and it would absorb all that energy. And um, we had to make sure the test did not exceed 20 G's. Okay. And so we had like a 200-pound weight, which is what a body would be, right? And we hung it from the ceiling, okay? And I had a hook which was attached to the shock absorber, and the trick was to drop the ball in free fall and have it catch onto that hook onto that shock absorber and pull it down, and then the force should never exceed 20 G's, and so when you say like you're talking about the body, on that, I think that the human body could absorb a lot more, and as long as it's like not a sudden stop, In fact, when people first came out the trains, they thought people would be smashed, from the force of the train going forward so fast, like 60 miles an hour, you know. So I think it's all relative, and you end up in an inertial frame of that device you're in, and it really doesn't matter what the exterior is.
Well, now, the other thing is traveling in a cloaked device, since you have no inertia, if you run into something, you're just going to bounce off. You're not gonna get crushed. And if you're inside with no inertia and you go from 0 to 1,000 mile an hour in 1 second, which supposedly they say they do that, um, it's not going to affect you at all. Now, the only thing is that high of a frequency on your body for an extended period of time, or even a short period of time, could be bad. So I don't know. Maybe the little creatures that fly around in them were made special just to do that, if there is such a thing. I've not seen them. I've just heard of that. So
Well, the other thing is like I'm looking at these drawings you have, and I don't know. Have you heard of a rodent coil?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
to me
We
that's
had
just
one out
so
there at
reminiscent.
church.
It's just so reminiscent, an electronic version of a rodent coil. Um, and the rodent coils are really interesting. They're starting to have some really strange effects with those. Some of these experimenters are, and hopefully in the next month, within the next month from now, um, we will be honored to be able to have one of our guests come on and reveal the latest um, uh, observation they've had with a working rodent coil that they have, which actually shows um, over unity effects. And anyway, Maria Gonzalez here, she says, "What do you think of Victor Grabanaki's work?"
I'm not familiar with it.
Well, he's a guy, a couple of issues of ours, especially Dan Davison does a lot of work with him, with his stuff. And he put like these uh, beetle wings on the bottom of this board. And you can see him, he's from Russia. You can see him standing when he twists his little control there. It opens up the beetle wings and he can fly, you know. Um, and so, in fact, a couple uh, conferences ago, we had some of the speakers talking about his work. Uh,
Hmm.
maybe maybe the beetle wings when they open up like that actually emit like maybe 1.6 gigahertz. Hard to say.
Now there's been stories at the ancient world. They would beat some drums, play a trumpet,
Mhm.
play another musical instrument. They'd play three musical instruments, and they would all sit in a circle, all right, a half circle, and focus energy and try and move a big rock or something. So um, frequencies of sound, could also disrupt gravity. I mean, if you knew which ones to do it, could disrupt it. Now, it may be more than one frequency. It might be 1.6 and two or three others. But if people start monitoring for these frequencies and start publish them, other people are going to have other ideas because they're going to see them and wonder what they are.
Okay. Yeah, and Victor's work is fairly recent. I mean, they even have video of it, so it's fairly recent. Like within the last 40 years, and and it was that in the Soviet Union. Okay, now we also have another question here. These crafts cavitate the ether. They're essentially outside the drag effects, gravity of that medium, like a fish out of water, not the same physics apply. I think that would go back to what you're saying, like when you're in one of these things, you're encased, So therefore, what happens inside of the device is independent of what goes on outside the device. Yeah.
You're going to be in a bubble, and
Yeah.
uh, you know, gravity's not going to affect you. So we're kind of saying the same thing.
So anyway, I think we had a pretty interesting discussion here, our presentation. I hope you can make it to our conference next year. Maybe you might have some work done on that, more work done on the PAP engine technology, um, which I think is pretty interesting stuff. And
Well, it could easily change the world. If everybody had a 20 horsepower generator, they could just park in their house or put in their car, and maybe had to charge it up once a year or so often, and you didn't, and cost you $20. That'd be it. Wouldn't that be great? That's what I think we're going to achieve that. And the thing of it is, I don't know if we're 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years away from it. But it did happen. Everybody, that saw the PAP engine, it was so far over Unity that you just didn't question it. It just ran, and it ran well. So hopefully we'll get that. That's my main goal. Flying saucers is secondary, but I want one. All right. The thing I saw fly out across my house, I want one. If I can get in it, fly down to New Mexico in 15 seconds rather than 15 hours, I want one. So that's where I am on UFOs.
Okay, well, before we leave, I'm going to play our latest a promo for our upcoming conference. I'd like to remind everyone of our conference coming up. And thank you for being with us, Dannel.
So these Tesla Tech conferences have been going on for more than 40 years, 25 speakers or more each year. So that's like 1,000 or more of these presentations you can get. And the fact is, a lot of these guys are inventors, and they had stuff that they have been showing. This is the place where they come to show and tell. And many of them are passed away. And so the only place you can go to recover what they gave us, what they gave to the world, is Tesla Tech.
Magnetic motors, water, theory, and inventors uniquely displaying their great inventions.
Over 50 years of the greatest minds. You have Royal Rife, who invented the Rife microscope. Google him. You have John Keeley, he was not a charlatan. Victor Schomburger, another brilliant mind, specialized in vertical lift. And my name's Marco Rodin. I'm the discoverer of the decocubit. I just completed a 4-hour workshop, and it is available for you to see if you subscribe to Tesla Tech.
I was playing around with these Rodin numbers, but then I realized there's an application, a really cool one I've been working on for 10 years, and that's basically an electron model. I can model these numbers like their frequencies in an X direction, a Y direction, and a Z direction, and they roll back into themselves. The model is amazing. It's three-dimensional. It has all the properties I've been looking for an electron model. I'm very excited about it.
You're talking about giants and free energy, fusion, electronics, mathematics, esoteric knowledge. You must check this out. It's a subscription only, rightly so, because you're talking about wisdom that you can't find anywhere on the internet.
Breakthroughs or discoveries, videos that you'll never find anywhere else.
My name is Mon, and I come from Georgia. I've been coming with family and friends to the Tesla convention for almost 10 years. The most prized possession was coming back home to Georgia with the CDs. So when I just found out that all this material is available on YouTube for a subscription, we can go on YouTube, we can subscribe, we can sit together, chat, see what this conference is about.
This is a great channel. For only $9.99, you get the legends of this field.
And you'll find the greatest array and world's biggest assortment of free energy, over unity, 0-point energy, space power propulsion, medical, counterculture, breakthrough technology, all hosted there. It's the largest video library ever assembled.
Live on very good videotapes.
And you can get involved. You can be part of this process.
Write emails, have direct contact with the speakers, and guess what? If you're truly inspired with what you see over there, next year you can join us.
Well, that's should get you all excited to either sign up for the conference or at least subscribe to the channel. And if you like us, punch that thumbs up and help us out. And we'll see you next week. Thank you much.